What's up everyone, it's your boy JP, and today we're talking about useful tips that you may not have seen elsewhere for Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I've compiled this list of things that I haven't really seen elsewhere on the internet. A lot of people are covering the basic stuff, but I'm going to show you some things that I haven't seen talked about too much, because the game doesn't always necessarily explain every single gameplay mechanic and feature in the game. So I decided to make this video to make your life as Arthur Morgan just a little bit easier. And it doesn't really matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for a little while. Some of these things you may not know. So hopefully I'll be able to help some of you and show you some things that you may have missed. Now before we start, I'm going to go over some basic stuff that is in pretty much every video I've seen on Red Dead Redemption 2 so far. So if you've happened to been living under a rock for the past week, or you missed one of the thousands of videos that have been out, I decided to give you 10 quick tips before we get into my list of the lesser known tips in the game. Quick tip number 1 is an easy one. A lot of people probably already know it, but the game doesn't really explain it, so I figured I'd go over it real quick. Now, instead of hitting start and then selecting map, you can just hold down start. It instantly goes into the map and you don't have to deal with that extra screen. Also, you can save the game at any time by going into the story tab in the start menu. The game does have autosave, but it only really saves for major events during side missions and story missions. So if you're out hunting for a while, exploring, etc., you may want to save the game manually yourself instead of relying on the autosave, because it may not always save the progress that you want it to save. Number 2 is use cinematic mode. Now in Red Dead Redemption 2 there is a cinematic mode where whether you're on horseback or walking around, you can hold down back button on Xbox and it goes into a cinematic mode. This feature puts the game in widescreen and you can change the camera angles much like you would see in a movie. But this also doubles as a sort of partial fast travel feature. And as long as you have a waypoint set on your map or you have a mission marker set, it'll act as a sort of autopilot to get you to your destination. So all you have to do is set your horse to the speed you prefer, hold down back to enter cinematic mode, and sit back and enjoy the ride. Now I do caution you not to just put your controller down and leave the room, because things will still pop up, events will still pop up, just as they would if you were riding there yourself. Bandits will try and rob you, bounty hunters will show up, so you still want to be paying attention so you can get out of cinematic mode quick and react to whatever happens. And I do think this is a great feature that they added, because this map is massive and you have to travel everywhere by horseback. So it does make traveling just a little bit easier. Now tip number 3 is you can and should surrender to bounty hunters and law enforcement. And the reason you want to do this, especially early in the game, is because you just don't have the cash to pay off a bounty, and it's just so irritating going into an area where you have a bounty. You constantly have to watch your back and you're constantly being chased down. So early in the game when you don't have much money to pay off the bounty, you could just surrender, serve the jail time. Sometimes your gang will even break you out. But serve your time, get out, your bounty's gone, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Number 4 can also help you out with getting bounty hunters off your back. So the 4th tip is take advantage of your wardrobe and the clothes sold in stores. Clothing in Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't just a cosmetic thing like in most games. It does serve a few purposes, and one of those things is to disguise yourself. You can completely change your appearance in this game, which will help you evade lawmen trying to collect a bounty on your head. You can change your clothes, beard, hair, hat, so you don't have to be wearing a bandana all the time. And plus, wearing a bandana in town and stuff, people don't want to talk to you, people kind of get spooked out. So you can always change your appearance if you don't want to pay off the bounty or surrender. Just go to the local barber and cut your hair, change your look. Or you can go to a store, buy some clothes, or go to Arthur's tent and change clothes with clothes you already have. This actually really does work and can be a huge help if you don't want to pay, fight, or surrender. So give it a try. Moving on to quick tip number 5, which is put outfits on your horse. Now when you're at camp and you're looking through your wardrobe, picking what you want to wear, you'll notice you can store outfits on your horse. And this is useful because if you're not always going back to camp and you're exploring a lot, going to different regions, weather and temperature does matter in this game. What you're wearing does matter. It can hurt your health and stamina. You can actually die from being in weather without the proper clothing. So at the very least, you should have 2 outfits on your horse, one for hot weather and one for cold weather. You can also just put outfits on there that you like so you could change on the move. But you definitely want to take advantage of this feature so you don't have to worry about going into a cold weather environment and dying or not being able to continue because you just don't have the proper gear for the environment. Number 6 is a simple one, but it's very useful. As soon as you can buy a Lockbreaker, buy it. Early on in the game, the only way to break locks is to shoot them open, and that's not necessarily always the best route if you got enemies sleeping around or you don't want to alert anybody. And the Lockbreaker will make you able to open chests a little bit more quietly so you don't alert nearby enemies or witnesses. Moving on to quick tip number 7, which is unlock all fast travel points early on in the game. You can do this very easily by going to a local train station and buying a ticket to every major city in the game. This is great to do for a couple reasons. One is it'll unfog most of your map for you. 2, it'll make it a lot easier to fast travel to locations, seeing as you have them all unlocked to fast travel to. And 3, when you later upgrade Author's Tent in camp and are able to fast travel from camp, again you'll have all these locations unlocked, which makes it a lot easier to travel the map. Also, it's nice to be able to travel to some of these cities before you get to them in the story, because every city kind of has unique items in their stores and whatnot. So if you're playing one day and you got some extra time and extra cash, jump on a train and start traveling to each city. It will make traveling a lot easier in the future. Number 8 is kind of an obvious one, but I wanted to add it to the list because I personally completely missed any explanation on this subject. In the game, Deadeye upgrades as you progress. And when you're first using Deadeye, it doesn't really give you any control over where you can mark the enemies. It just kind of marks wherever you go over their bodies. But when you get to tier 2 of Deadeye, you use RB or R1 on PS4 to mark wherever on their body you want to shoot, which makes it a lot easier, so you're not wasting extra bullets on a guy you already had a sure kill on. Now, number 9 is a useful one. It took me a little while to figure this one out. But you can use left on the D-pad while aiming to change shoulders, which obviously can be really useful in third person to get the right angle on an enemy. Also, if you hit up on the D-pad, it aims your gun straight in the air so you can fire a warning shot. It helps when you're herding cattle or trying to scare somebody. And it's the same thing in first person. You just hit up on the D-pad, same thing happens. Now, also in first person, you can hit down on the D-pad and that aims down the iron sights. Because when you just hold left trigger when you're in first person, it kind of just aims, but you're not aiming down sights. So if you hit down on the D-pad, it aims down sights for you. And also if you go back to third person and you go back into first person and aim, it'll keep left trigger as aiming down sights if that's what you last had it at. And finishing up the quick tips with number 10. This one might seem obvious to some people, but I had to put it in the basic quick tips. And it's, you should always eat the stew when you're at the camp. Not only should you go to your tent and clean yourself up and get some sleep to refill your cores, also hit your horse at camp or wherever you bring it, because that refills its health and stamina. And at the very least, when you're at camp, you should eat the stew, because that refills your health, stamina, and Deadeye. And I believe it fortifies them a bit. So when you're at camp, don't forget to eat some of Pearson's world famous stew. Okay, so on to the good stuff, what this video is all about, which is my list of lesser known tips that will help you immensely in Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, before we get into it, I'd like to ask you guys to leave a comment, join the discussion, let me know what you think, add some tips if I missed any, if you want to help anybody out, and drop a like down below if you found anything in this video useful at all. It helps me out immensely. Also, feel free to leave me any feedback. I'm still new to YouTube, so I'd love to hear feedback, what I'm doing right or wrong. And again, anything to further the conversation, comment down below. I'll be watching and listening. I'd love to further this conversation with you guys in the comments below. Alright, so let's get into it. One thing I for sure wanted on this list and wanted everybody to know, because it seems as though a lot of people don't know about it, is the camera. Red Dead Redemption 2 has a camera. Now, coming off Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's definitely not as good as that camera. There's just the freedom you have in Odyssey to do pretty much whatever you want with that camera is amazing. But at the very least, Red Dead Redemption 2 gave us a camera so we can take pictures. Now, you are limited to what you can do, but there is some cool features. It is based on an old-fashioned type camera, so it's stationary. You have to set it up, and you can either take a self-portrait or like a landscape photo. But something Rockstar did that's really cool is you can change poses, and you can change the expression on your face. So definitely check that out. Have to take advantage of this feature. It's great. So to do so, you're going to want to open up your weapon wheel with LB. Then hit RB to move on to the next section where your tonics and some of your supplies are. And it's the slot directly to the right where your binoculars are. And you can cycle through it with right trigger to find the camera. Now, the second thing I wanted to go over is taking care of your horse. Now, this is definitely an obvious one. They kind of explain it pretty well at the beginning of the game. But something I noticed is I'm pretty good about taking care of my horse. Pretty often when I stop and I have a chance, I'll pet it and I'll feed it and brush it. But I noticed I wasn't feeding it as much. Once I got to 100% bond with my horse, I was in the player tab in the start menu, and I was looking at the horse's stats and whatnot, and I noticed that where it said physique, it said malnourished. So I thought I was taking care of my horse well. I mean, I was always petting it and encouraging it when I rode. I was always brushing it because that helps the health, but I guess I wasn't feeding it enough. So I just went out of the start menu, fed it a couple handfuls of food, went back, and it was back to fit. So I just urge you guys to keep an eye on that, because I'm sure, just like everything else in the game, that will have negative effects on your horse if it's malnourished. Now, third on the list is the missions on the map. So when you go into your map, there's two types of missions. One's in yellow, which is the main story missions, and one's in white, which is side missions and whatnot, bounties and debtors and all that good stuff. Now, what I've noticed is the white missions are not always there. Some of them are time sensitive, some of them go away and come back, but the yellow missions will be there permanently because they're story missions. So if you have white missions around and you don't want to necessarily be hauling ass through the story, definitely stop by some white missions because you will miss out on some of them. I noticed a lot of them disappearing and they'll come back at a later time, but just keep an eye on that. And if you're kind of like me and you just want to live in the world and play it and get 100% completion, and you're not all about just completing the story as fast as you can, definitely try and accomplish some of those white markers sooner rather than later. Coming in at number 4 on our list of unexplained tips is the X's on the radar are dynamic, meaning when you've killed a bunch of enemies and you're there looting the bodies, you see on your map a bunch of little X's. Now, after you've looted an enemy, the X is no longer bolded. So when I figured this out, it made it a lot easier. You know, when you got a dozen enemies around you down, you'll know which ones have been looted or not. So the ones who have been looted are sort of a faded X, and the ones who have yet to have been looted are a bold X. I keep saying a bold X, but it's kind of just an X with a white outline. But when you look at your mini-map and you see the different X's, it kind of looks bolded compared to the ones that have already been looted. Hopefully this tip is useful for you. It was very useful for me. But moving on to number 5 is use Eagle Eye when looting. Now, I know you're taught to use Eagle Eye when hunting, but it is very useful when looting, especially with the kind of clunky looting system in the game. And also, Rockstar decided to go with a more realistic route with how looting works. Loot doesn't really pop out at you like in most other games. So if you use Eagle Eye, everything will kind of pulse in an orange color that can be looted, including chests and whatnot. This makes it a hell of a lot easier to loot, especially in a building or a tight space where you can't really tell the difference of what can be looted and opened, things that are lootable and things that are just cosmetic. So use Eagle Eye, it makes things a lot easier. Also, an add-on to this would be to go into first person mode when you're looting drawers and cabinets. That way you can see better, especially when you're full of a specific item and there's other items that you could loot next to it. It's pretty difficult to try and get that item when you're in third person mode. It's still a little bit difficult in first person, but it does make it a bit easier. And lastly on my list of lesser known tips in Red Dead Redemption 2 is I wanted to show you guys how I manage the way I donate to the camp and help the camp out. So early on in the game, it's kind of difficult to donate to the camp. You barely have enough money for yourself, so it's tough getting yourself to donate anything worth noting for the camp. But I kind of developed a system for myself that made it a lot easier for me. So what I do is when I go to the contribution box, I give cash first. And what I do is I round it to the nearest 100. Or now that I have money, it's the 100. But at the beginning, it was the nearest tenth or whatever it was. So if you have, say, $153.67, I would put $53.67 in that way. I gave them a pretty good donation, and I walked away with $100 still. Then I move on to donate items, and what I do is I find the least valuable items there are. So if there's anything pretty much $3 or less, I donate that. Or if I have 5 of them, I'll give 3 of each. Say it's $3, I'll give 3 of each. So you're giving $9. You're basically giving $10. You keep $6 for yourself. And this also clears up space so you can loot more items, because if you have 5 pocket watches, you can't pick up any more, and you can't always get to the fence to sell off stolen goods. So it's a good way to donate to the camp, keep Dutch and the camp happy, and to also balance your inventory. Other ways you can help the camp is there's daily chores in the camp. You can bring a hay bale to the horses, bring a pail down to a river to get water. Any of those things brings up your honor and also helps your standing in the camp. And while you're at camp, you obviously are always there to do something, whether it be change, sleep, eat, shave, restock on stuff. As you upgrade your camp, you can restock more and more things, such as medicinal items, ammunition, food. So what you want to do is when you first go there, you want to restock yourself on all those things. Go to each prospective wagon, grab the items you need, and stock up. And then once you go to the donation box, donate your money and items. Then you can go to the ledger and restock all those things you just got. That way the camp's provisions are still in good shape. But you definitely want to make sure you do that before you go to the ledger, because if you go to the ledger first and restock all the provisions in camp and then go around and pick everything up for yourself, now it's empty again. So you want to go first, pick up the things, and restock the camp afterwards. And that pretty much wraps it up on my list of 10 quick tips you probably already knew, and a couple of unknown tips that I hope helped a couple people out. I just really wanted to make this video because through all the articles I read and videos I watched online, I noticed there was some things that weren't being covered and some things I was figuring out as I was playing. Hopefully I helped a couple people out. If I did, let me know in the comments. If there's anything anyone wants to add, let us know down below. If you have some of your own lesser known tips that you're not really seeing shown anywhere and you want to help some people out, let us know down below as well. I'll be watching and I'll be responding. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you like this video at all. I'd love to know that I'm doing something right. I'm going to keep making more videos, and I'm probably going to stay with the more lesser known stuff because there's so many people making Red Dead videos right now. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.